Hello everyone, a warm welcome to this virtual training series on Microsoft 365 Mobility and Security MS 101. I'm Monica from TechnoFocus and I will be serving as your moderator today. We're glad to have Johan Nickel with us who will be presenting today's session. He is a certified Microsoft 365 trainer and passionate senior cloud solution architect with great experience in developing and integrating applications with Azure Active Directory. He is currently based in Switzerland. If you happen to face any audio or video issues during the webcast or have any technical questions, please post them in the Q&A panel and our team is here to help you. Now I'd like to turn today's event over to our presenter. Johan, you have the floor now.
Hi and a warm welcome to MS 101, Microsoft 365 Mobility and Security. We structured this module into the implementation of Cloud App Security, the CAS service of Microsoft, then the implementation of threat management, and the implementation of the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. On the further days, on day 3, as already mentioned in the last module, we go through the implementation of data loss prevention and sensitivity labels, and on day 4, on the management of data governance, auditing and reporting. Now let's discuss about Microsoft 365 Defender, which gets a lot of improvements and name changes in the last weeks and months. We have these different Microsoft 365 Defender technologies, like the Microsoft 365 Defender, that was previously called the Microsoft Threat Protection, the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, which was the Advanced Threat Protection, then the Microsoft Defender for Office 365, which was previously called the Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection feature set, and the Microsoft Defender for Identity, which was called the Azure Advanced Threat Protection feature set. So with this Microsoft 365 scenario and the Defender options, you have all around the XDR capabilities ready for identities, for endpoints, for cloud apps, for email and documents that you discover on which device are sensitive content and operate in your security mode. It brings also artificial intelligence really to reduce the SOC work items in that case, and it brings around $1,000 to just 40 high priority incidents. To 40 high priority incidents is what I wanted to say, and it helps you really to spend your time on focusing on the real efficient information. So, and around that, obviously around the Microsoft 365 Defender technologies and the adoption of Cloud App Security on the other hand, and for example Azure Sentinel, you can build up a whole SOC infrastructure with this feature set, and it brings up a lot of security values and advanced hunting strategies inside of your scenario to protect your environment in case of identities, endpoints, cloud apps, and your data obviously.
Let's jump in the first feature set, the Microsoft Cloud App Security. That is a cloud access security broker that supports various deployment modes, including, for example, log collection, API connectors, and reverse proxy. It basically provides rich visibility and control over data travel and sophisticated analytics to identify and combat cyber threats across all your Microsoft and third-party cloud services. Microsoft Cloud App Security natively integrates with other leading Microsoft solutions and is designed with security professionals in mind. So it provides simple deployment, centralized management, and a lot of great automation capabilities. So the framework itself is defined in 4 points. So there is first one, it's discovering and the control of shadow IT. So you can identify cloud apps, IaaS, and PaaS services used by your organization, by your users itself. So you can investigate usage patterns, assess the risk levels, and for example the business readiness with more than 60,000 SaaS apps against more than 80 risks. The second point is the protection of your sensitive information anywhere in the cloud. So you understand, you can classify and protect the exposure of sensitive information at rest. So you have the capabilities to leverage out-of-the-box policies and automated processes to apply controls in a real time across all your cloud apps. The third point is the protection against cyber threats and anomalies. So you are able to detect unusual behavior across cloud apps to identify ransomware, for example, compromised users or rogue applications. And on the other hand, you can analyze high-risk usage and remediate it automatically to limit the risk to your organization. The fourth point is the assess the compliance of your cloud apps. So you can see if your cloud apps meet relevant compliance requirements, including regulatory compliance and industry standards, for example. You can prevent data leaks to non-compliant apps, and you can limit the access to regulated data. So in total, this framework really brings up a real great control over your cloud applications. As you can see in the architecture overview, you gain a lot of visibility in your cloud or on-premises application ecosystem, because you can use the cloud discovery option to map and identify your cloud environment and the cloud apps your organization is using actually. On the second hand, you can sanctioning and unsanctioning apps in your cloud system. You can use easy to deploy app connectors that take advantage of provider APIs, so that you gain visibility and governance of apps that you connect to basically. The other option what you see here in the architecture is the Conditional Access App Control protection, where you can get real-time visibility and control over the access and activities within your cloud apps basically. On the other hand, you get the help for continuous control by setting several policies. You can fine-tune the policies, and you can interact really with your cloud applications to get a rich set of security with cloud app security. So what does this mean in detail? Basically, with cloud discovery, you can use your traffic logs to dynamically discover and analyze the cloud apps that your organization is using. You can create snapshot reports of your organization's cloud use. You can manually upload log files from firewalls or proxies for analysis. Or you can set up continuous reports. For example, also for using cloud app security log collectors to periodically forward your logs in that environment. The other main concept is sanctioning and unsanctioning of an app. So you can use cloud app security to sanction or unsanction apps in your organization by using the cloud app catalog. You can use the cloud app catalog to rate the risk for your cloud apps based on, for example, regulatory certifications, industry standards or best practices. Then what is also always asked in the exam, how you can customize scores and weights. So you are able to customize the scores and weights of various parameters to your organizational needs. So based on these scores, cloud app security lets you know how risky an app is, for example. So scoring is based on over 80 risk factors that might affect your environment. On the other hand, we have the app connectors. App connectors basically use APIs from cloud app providers to integrate the cloud app security cloud with other cloud apps. So app connectors basically extend the control and protection scenarios. They also give you access to your information directly from the cloud apps. For example, for cloud app security analysis. To connect an app and extend protection, you as the administrator authorize Cloud App Security to access the app in specific. Then the Cloud App Security queries the app for activity logs, and it scans data, accounts, and the cloud content. So Cloud App Security can enforce policies, detects threats, and provides the governance actions for resolving issues. Cloud App Security uses the APIs provided by the cloud provider, so each app has its own framework and API limitations. Cloud App Security basically works with app providers on optimizing the use of APIs to ensure the best performance. So considering the various limitations that apps impose on apps, such for example throttling, API limits, and dynamic time shifting API windows, the Cloud App Security engines utilize the allowed capacity. Some operations like scanning all files in the tenant require a large number of APIs, so they are spread over a longer period. Expect some policies to run for several hours or several days, for example. The Conditional Access App Control protection uses the reverse proxy architecture to give you in specific the tools you need to have a real-time visibility and control over the access to and the activities performed within your cloud environment. With Conditional Access App Control, you can protect against the following. You can avoid data leaks by, for example, blocking downloads before they happen. You can set rules that force data stored in and downloaded from the cloud to protect it with encryption. This is basically, for example, done with the Azure Information Protection integration. You can gain more visibility into unprotected endpoints, so you can monitor what's being done on unmanaged devices, for example. On the other hand, you can control the access from non-corporate networks or risky IP addresses. With the policy control, you can use policies to find your users' behavior in the cloud. So you use the policies to detect risky behavior, violations, or suspicious data endpoints and activities in your cloud environment. So if you need, you can use policies to integrate remediation processes to achieve complete risk mitigation. There are a lot of capabilities. Microsoft Flow is also an integration. You can automate some stuff inside of these scenarios. We're gonna start with the Conditional Access App Control feature. So basically, Conditional Access App Control enables user app access and sessions to be monitored and controlled in real time based on access and session policies. Access and session policies are used basically within the Cloud App Security portal to further refine filters and set actions to be taken on a user. You can do the following things with access and session policies. You can prevent data exfiltration, for example. Let's assume following thing from an unmanaged device. You can block that the user downloads, cuts and copy operations, or print sensitive documents. On the other hand, you can protect on a download experience. So instead of blocking the download of sensitive documents, for example, you can require documents to be labeled and protected with Azure Information Protection. This gives you a lot of great capabilities because you can instantly, on a download to an unsecure place, put also not only the classification, the label, you can have a fine-grained protection on the file itself. On the other hand, you can prevent the upload of unlabeled files, for example. This is the other direction. So before a sensitive file is uploaded, for example, distributed and used by others, it's important to make sure that the file has the right label and protection. So this brings you a lot of capabilities to bring the Cloud App Security between you and the application to protect exactly this scenario. On the other hand, we have the monitoring of user sessions for compliance. So you can see risky users that are monitored when they sign into apps and their actions, and they are logged from within the session. So you get also all the information about Azure AD identity protection, about the risk calculation inside this game, and you have many more capabilities to intervene here in these scenarios. You can also block the access, so you're capable to granularly block access to specific apps and users depending on several risk factors. As I already mentioned, there can also be the feature set included of all the telemetry information, all of the security graph, what is also gathered over the Azure Active Directory identity protection feature. Also, you can do the following thing, that you block custom activities. So you have maybe unique scenarios that carry a risk. For example, sending messages with sensitive content in applications like Microsoft Teams or Slack. So as you can see, you have a lot of capabilities to protect your application and your data with the Conditional Access App Control feature set in it. Let's take a closer look how we can identify devices. So Conditional Access App Control basically enables you to create policies to take into account whether a device is managed or not. So to identify whether a device is managed or not, the feature uses the following scenarios. The first one is a compliant device, the second one is a domain joined device, and the third one is a client certificate that is deployed on the device. So you can see that as well under the device identification settings inside of the Cloud App Security portal, as you see in the figure of the slide. So what does it mean, a compliant and domain joined device? So Azure AD Conditional Access enables you to compliant and domain joined device information, that this is passed directly to the Microsoft Cloud App Security. From this point on, an access policy or a session policy can be developed that uses exactly this device state as a filter. On the second one is the client certificate authenticated device, how this works for us. The device identification mechanism can request authentication from relevant devices using client certificates. So you can either use existing client certificates that are already deployed in your organization, or roll out new client certificates to manage devices. You then use the presence of those certificates to set access and session policies. SSL client certificates are verified via a trust chain, so you can upload an X509 root or intermediate certificate authority formatted in the PAM certificate format. This certificate specific must contain the public key of the CA, which is then used to sign the client certificates presented during a session. Once a certificate is uploaded and the relevant policy is configured, and when an applicable session traverses Conditional Access App Control, the Cloud App Security endpoint requests the browser to present the SSL client certificate. So the browser serves the SSL client certificates that are installed with a private key. So this is a combination of a certificate and a private key, and is done by using the PKey CS12 file format, and is typically a P12 or PFX. Next we take a look how session control works for us. For example, creating a session policy with Conditional Access App Control enables us to control user sessions by redirecting the user through a reverse proxy instead of directly to the app. From then on, user requests and responses go through the Cloud App Security rather than directly to the app. When a session is protected by proxy, all the relevant URLs and cookies are replaced by Cloud App Security. Let's make an example. If the app returns a page with links, host domains, and with myapp.com, for example, the link is replaced with domains ending with something like myapp.com, .us, .cas, .ms. And the great thing about all this session control is that this method doesn't require you to install anything on the device, and this makes it ideal when monitoring or controlling session from unmanaged devices or partner users. Let's make a side note on it. Cloud App Security leverages Azure data centers around the world to provide optimized performance through geolocation. So this means that a user session may be hosted outside of a particular region depending on traffic patterns and their location. However, to protect the privacy, no session data obviously is stored in these data centers.
Let's jump into Office 365 Cloud App Security. What is it and what it covers? Basically, the Office 365 Cloud App Security is a smaller brother or subset of the Microsoft Cloud App Security that provides specifically enhanced visibility and control inside of the Microsoft Office 365 services. It includes also threat detection based on user activity logs. You can discover shadow IT for apps that have really similar functionality to Office 365 offerings, to control app permissions to Office 365 and apply access and session controls. You have the specific feature support. Let's talk about the cloud discovery, which allows you to see the discovered apps, the deployment for discovery analysis, the log anonymization for user privacy, for example, and the access to the full cloud app catalog and many other features. Then the information protection part is the integration with data loss prevention, the app permissions and ability to revoke access to that. The threat detection, we have the anomaly detection and behavioral analytics. We can work with manual and automatic alert remediation. We have an SEM connector, and we obviously integrate to the Microsoft Intelligent Security Graph and many other feature sets. Then the Conditional Access App Control scenario, where we can have real-time session monitoring and controlling, and the Cloud Platform Security, which allows us to have several security configurations inside of our environment.
After talking about the device identification, we will take a close look to the supported apps and clients. So Conditional Access App Control currently supports SAML and OpenID Connect apps, which are configured with single sign-on along with apps hosted on premises, configured with the Azure Active Directory application proxy. So Conditional Access App Control also supports apps that are configured with identity providers other than Azure Active Directory. You can also gather a list from the MCAS team what this exactly is and which apps are supported. Then we need to see how the session control is available for browsers. So basically there's for Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Apple Safari, and you can access to mobile and desktop apps, and they can also be blocked or allowed. So on this place, using a client app filter in an access policy can cause the resulting user session to be proxied by Cloud App Security. In access policies, when you use the client app filter, it defaults to mobile and desktop. So this can also cause the resulting user session to be proxied by Cloud App Security. To avoid this behavior, please set the value to browser. By default, evaluating whether an app is mobile or desktop, that can cause also the resulting user session to be proxied by the Cloud App Security. To avoid this specific behavior, set the client app filter in your access policies to equal to browser. Another side note is that Cloud App Security leverages the Transport Layer Security TLS Protocol 1.2 Plus to provide the best-in-class encryption mechanism. So native applications and browsers that do not support TLS 1.2 Plus will not be accessible when configured with session control. However, SaaS apps that use TLS 1.1 or lower will appear in the browser as using TLS 1.2 plus when configured with Cloud App Security. By natively integrating with Azure Active Directory, any app that is configured with SAML or OpenID Connect, you can onboard any app yourself. In addition, the following apps are featured by Cloud App Security. To give you a few examples, you can use AWS, you can use Box, Concur, you have the Microsoft Office Suite, Exchange Online, you have SharePoint Online, Teams, for example, is in preview at the moment. You can have Workplace by Facebook or a G Suite environment, and this gives you a really great part of that. So, and the list what we see here is the specific featured apps is Exchange Online, OneDrive for Business, Power BI, SharePoint Online, Microsoft Teams in preview as I already mentioned, and Jammer that is also in preview. So in these applications, in these specific apps, we have a lot of more controls than in others. Now that we know the featured applications, we take a look into the deployment of Conditional Access App Control for exactly these featured apps. And we can use a simple 4-step method to do that. We do the following. In the first step, we create an Azure Active Directory Conditional Access Test Policy from our Azure portal. Then afterwards, in step 2, we sign into each app using a user scope exactly to this policy. In step 3, we verify the apps that are configured to use the access and session controls. And simply the step 4 is to test the deployment and to verify that everything works against this configuration of access and session controls. If you want to onboard and deploy a Conditional Access App Control for an app, is a straightforward process. So you start with step 1, that is the configuration of an Azure AD conditional access policy to route specifically the app to the Cloud App Security integration. The second step is the configuration of the users that will deploy the app and will also access the app. The third step is that you configure the app that you are deploying. The fourth step is the verification that the app is working basically correctly, and then at step 5 you enable the app for the use in your organization and you protect it by Cloud App Security. So I also could recommend you to check the dashboard really daily to see what new alerts have been triggered, and it's a good place to keep an eye on the health of your cloud environment. So the dashboard helps you really to get a sense of what's happening inside of your Cloud App Security scenario. If you see here on the slide, you see what we need to do here. I want to have the configuration of data streams, that I can apply policies for that, and I can say sanction apps that you want really to allow people to use. So in this case, you identify over the Cloud App Discovery mode, you identify which applications are come through your environment, and this gives you really good insights, and you can allow or disallow applications to use for your user set. And on the other hand, a very specific part is to set up the policies, also not just going through in like I have shown in the demonstration with blocking or with protecting information, just to get more and more insights about your cloud environment in a monitoring perspective. So it allows you very nice and granular features to show you what's happening, like mass downloads, like which identities from risky IPs, attacks against your identities. So I have a really great resource with the dashboard of Cloud App Security in that case. Give you a bit more of ideas which dashboards you should use to investigate your cloud environment. I want to point out a few dashboard variants in this case. The first one is the main dashboard. Obviously we have discussed it. It gives you an overview of cloud status, user files, activities, required actions like alerts, activity violations and content violations. the specific app dashboard, in the overview, you get a great overview of app usage per location, usage graphs per number of users, for example. On the app dashboard's info part, you just get a lot of information about the app details, the security and the compliance functionality. Then the other one I want to point out is the dashboard for the accounts. There you get really a great information of all the accounts and users, and specifically to which application they are linked. Then the activity log is one also I very want to point it out for the exam, is a drill down information that you can use and specifically to inspect all the app activities, like the ability to filter, to according users, to IP addresses, and many much more functionality. And another one is the alerts. Keep care about this because it's quite often asked in the exam as well. So this gives you all the insights about the app alerts. Also you can filter for the category, for the severity, and many more facts that you can filter out on that. On the user dashboard itself, you can gather a complete overview of the user profile in the cloud, about the locations, the recent activities, and the related alerts to the user. So as you see here as a summary, that's really a good way to investigate over these different portal effects to get more and more information and really play around with this feature set. If it comes to the risk scores and in specific how to work with the app risk scores, the Cloud App Catalog gives you a full picture of what Cloud Discovery identifies. So the Cloud Discovery analyzes your traffic logs against the Microsoft Cloud App Security's Cloud App Catalog, and it's similar, like over 16,000 cloud apps actually. The apps are ranked and scored based on more than 70 risk factors to provide you with ongoing visibility into the cloud usage, shadow IT, and the risk of shadow IT that poses to your organization. And in this case, what you can do here, and you will see on the portal itself, is that you have several sections what are provided from the risk factor itself. It shows you a general section, a security section, a compliance perspective, and a legal perspective. To make some examples, you get general information about the application itself, and for example, does it have a disaster recovery plan, how popular is this application, from which vendor is it, and from the security perspective, does this application provide a user audit trail, validates it the certificate name, does it support different protocols like SAML, does it provide a multi-factor authentication part in it, or is it allowed to make IP address restrictions, for example, from the security perspective. On the other part, from the compliance, you can see that does it met the ISO 27001, does it met FISMA, GAP, SOC, COBIT, or any other compliance framework in the market. And from the legal perspective, does it respect the data ownership, what about GDPR, for example the rights to erasure, or the reporting of data breaches, data protection, or the user ownership. So as you see, you get a lot of information and you can work with to define the risk of the application that is used inside of your company, and you can define you want to use it or not. So as already mentioned, you can also customize your risk score. As we know, Cloud Discovery provides you with a lot of important data regarding the credibility, the reliability of the cloud apps that are used across the environment. So within the portal, each discovered app is displayed along with a total score. The score in specific represents a Cloud App Security's assessment of this particular app's maturity of use for an enterprise. The total score of any given app is weighted average of 3 sub-scores relating to the 3 subcategories which Cloud App Security considers when accessing the reliability. That's the general section, the security section, compliance and legal section that I already mentioned in the previous slides. So each of the categories and specific is composed of many specific properties. According to the Cloud App Security scoring algorithm, each property receives a preliminary score between 0 and 10, and depending on the value. True, false values will receive a 10 or 0 accordingly. So, however, continuous properties such as a domain age will receive a certain value within the spectrum. The score of each property is weighted against all other existing fields in the category to create the category's subscore itself. If you, for example, encounter an unscored app, it usually indicates an app whose properties are unknown and is therefore unscored. So it's very important to take a minute to review and modify the default weights given to Cloud Discovery Score configuration. By default, all the various parameters evaluated are given an equal weight. So if there are certain parameters that are more or less important to your organization, it's important to change them and like yourself. To override the risk score in the discovered apps table or in the Cloud App Catalog, click the three dots to the right of any app and select Override App Score. So you can override the risk score of an app without changing the way it's weighted so that you get immediate results for your organization. For example, the risk score of a line of business application you use is 8. However, the app is sanctioned and encouraged by your organization. You might want to change the risk score to 10 for the line of business application. That's possible to override the score, and after you update the score, you can include app notes to make sure that your business justification is reported why you modified the app score and you clear it to the other administrators in your environment.
In the next demonstration, I will show you how you can work with Cloud App Security and specifically with risk scores.
The next topic what we're gonna through is how we can work with the risk scores in this case. As you can see here on the Cloud Discovery dashboard, you see directly here on the right side the risk levels that are associated with specific categories. For example, I have included now all categories and specifically by the traffic. Also can use that by transactions, the specific devices and so on. So I can choose the different topics here in that case. I directly see I'm not working actually with high risk apps because the users here in my environment are just working with the normal applications that I provided to them, and no shadow ID is really detected on this specific part. Obviously in other cases, if I work with other applications, I can also see here specific transactions or traffic for high risk apps. So we need to take a closer look here where we go through. Obviously I haven't discovered here any specific apps that are out of my range what I provided to the users. So I come here back to that specific scenario what I have here, what's included in. So I don't have high risk applications, but let's take a closer look here in that case. We have here this score basically that we can also give here to see between 0 and 10 how much we trust this application in that case, and what we can work with on this specific topic is we can go to the usage, to the info about the application, and we see all the different mechanisms that are included inside of these applications and define is it a trustworthy application or not. So what we can do basically is that we have the option to see do we trust the application and we decide is it a high or the low risk transaction if I go to this application. Let's assume we have an HR system connected to that or specific data, then we can address it as a high risk topic and work with the risk scores. So it's also a high risk when, for example, specific classified data goes through a Dropbox account what is not trusted in our case. And what we can do here over the discovered apps, we can also sanction this application or unsanction the application, and we can define the specific risk score we apply to an application what we want to do in that case. So this brings us really to a very sensitive work with application to include the risk scores inside of our scenario. So the Cloud Discovery Dashboard is really designed to give you more insight into how cloud apps are being used in your organization. It provides an at-a-glance overview of what kinds of apps are being used. You open alerts, the risk levels of apps in your organization. So it also shows you who your top app users are and provides an app headquarter location map. So the Cloud Discovery Dashboard has many options for filtering the data itself. And filtering allows you to generate specific views depending on what you're most interested in, using easy to understand graphics to give you the full picture at a glance. So as we already have seen, you can filter on the different apps, is it sanctioned or not, the biggest top identities what you have, the highest risk levels, or for example the data transfer to the application itself. So to review the Cloud Discovery Dashboard, it's quite easy to do. So always start with a first look at the overall cloud app use in your organization. Is a high-level usage overview. Then try to dive one level deeper to see which are the top categories used in your organization for each of the different use parameters. You can see how much of this usage is by a sanctioned apps, for example. Then afterwards, as a recommendation, go even deeper and see all the apps in the specific category in the Discovered Apps tab, and you can go forward with these things. Then you can see the top user source IP addresses to identify which users are the most dominant users of cloud apps in your organization, and you can check how the discovered apps spread according to geographic locations, like according to their headquarters in the headquarters map. Finally, don't forget to review the risk score and do the following thing, that you have the review of the score, the risk score of the discovered apps in the app risk overview, and always check the discovery alert resource status to see how many open alerts you should investigate. Cloud Discovery also enables you to deep dive in your IIS and PaaS resources. You can discover activity across your resource hosting platforms, viewing, for example, access to data across your self-hosted apps and resources including storage accounts, or infrastructure and custom apps hosted on Azure, the Google platform and AWS. Not only can you see the overall usage in your IIS solution, but you can get visibility into the specific resources that are hosted on each and the overall usage of the resources to help you to mitigate risk per resource. You can do that in the Cloud App Security portal, and you can select Discover and then the discovered resources. And there you can have a drill down into each resource to see what kinds of transactions occurred, who accessed it, and then drill down to investigate the users even further. Another great option is that you can exclude entities. So if you have system users, IP addresses or machines that are noisy but uninteresting, or apps that aren't relevant, you may want to exclude their data from the Cloud Discovery data that is analyzed. For example, you might want to exclude all information originating from 127.0.0.1 or localhost. In that case, you can create an exclusion. In the portal, under the settings icon, select just the Cloud Discovery settings, click the Exclude Entities tab and choose either the excluded users, IP addresses or the excluded machines tab and click the plus button to add your exclusion. Afterwards, add a user alias, an IP address or a machine name, and I always recommend to add this information that you really know why you have made this exclusion itself. The best way to get an overview of Shadow IT use across your organization is by generating a Cloud Discovery Executive report. This is one of the options. This report identifies the top potential risks and helps you to plan a workflow to mitigate and manage risk until they are resolved. You can just click the Cloud Discovery dashboard and the three dots in the upper right corner of the dashboard and just create a Cloud Discovery Executive report. That's a quite easy method to do. But another option for the reports is that we can do custom continuous reports that provide you more granularity when monitoring your organization's Cloud Discovery log data, for example. By creating custom reports, it's possible to filter on specific geographic locations, network and sites, or organizational units. By default, only the following reports appear in your Cloud Discovery report selector. The first one is the global report that consolidates all the information in the portal from all the data sources you included into your logs, and the global report doesn't include data from
Microsoft Defender for Endpoint.
The second one is the data source specific report that displays only information from a specific data source itself. If you want to delete a Cloud Discovery data, and sometimes there are a number of reasons why you may want to delete your Cloud Discovery data, I recommend you deleting it in the following cases. For example, if you manually uploaded log files and a long time passed before you updated the system with the new log files and you don't want old data affecting your results. On the other hand, when you set a new custom data view, it will apply only to new data from that point forward. So you may want to erase old data and then upload your log files again to enable the custom data view to pick up events in the log file data. Or on the other hand, if many users or IP addresses recently started working again after being offline for some time, their activity will be identified as anomalous and may give you false positive violations.
In the next demonstration, we will see Cloud App Security and the featured and discovered apps and what we can do with that.
So let's take a closer look on Cloud App Security, what we can do with that. What I already opened here in my Discover option of the Cloud App Security, I see all the discovered apps, what I get as a result from the integration of Cloud App Security inside of my infrastructure. So I see directly what's used on side of my user base. So I see that they use, for example, Azure CDN Edge nodes. I see that they use Salesforce, and I see that they use Google, for example. Different applications you will see here also if they use Dropbox or any other kind of applications that are discovered. So you see exactly about the information about your Shadow IT. What you also see here is that you get a direct information about the application that is used, which compliance topics, which security facts that support, and so on. So that's a big deal really to work with and to get an insight inside of your infrastructure. So there are also, from not only discovered apps, what we can do here, obviously we can block them, we can address them with different policies, we can make our nodes to improve our own ecosystem to be aligned to the user needs, and so on. On the other hand, what we have is we have specific applications that we can connect to Cloud App Security and to enhance the feature set of control through the applications. What you can see here in that case is specifically the Conditional Access App Control apps. This is what I want to go through. There are different app connectors that you can connect by default. That's, for example, Box, Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, Okta, or anything like that. And you also can integrate, obviously, for Conditional Access App Controls, featured apps. There are a few of them. What is available, what I already included here is Salesforce. Then also Microsoft Teams is already connected, and different other cases what I can use in my scenarios to directly apply them. You can also integrate additional ones here from this list to say, okay, I want to have, for example, an additional application that's basically built on a SAML application topic. So you can extend this solution as much as possible. So what we can do with this specific featured apps, that's the basic thing what we want to take a look on that. If I go to the control and go to the policies, I can see here under the session policy section policy I already have provided here for my user of Onboard to show you that how it works for you. What I want to do with this policy basically is I want to have an in-depth functionality to block copy and paste operations, for example in Microsoft Teams. Let's take a look on this policy to get a better insight of it. Obviously I can use here also operations of other integrated topics like Salesforce and so on, the ones of featured apps I could use. And you see here also there is not only for Teams a great integration, is also for editing item in Salesforce and so on, a very deep and granular option really to protect your application and to work with this featured apps. What I want to do here right now is I want to block, for example, an activity, as I mentioned in Teams. I want to block copy and paste in the specific scenario. The app is Microsoft Teams. My user is limited to Onboard. I use that for user specific to provide additional scenarios in the same time. And my activity type equals to cut copy, and my device is not equal an hybrid Azure AD joint device and an Intune compliant device. So let's take a short look here on this machine. So this is dsrect cmd.exe/status, and we see that this device is nowhere joined in no Azure Active Directory, in no domain. So this exactly is the scenario what I have here. I don't have now an hybrid Azure AD joint, an Intune compliant, so the rule should apply exactly to my activity. What I do now is I block this action. I notify the user by an email. Also additionally I customize a block message inside of the scenario, so the user will see that specific message. And I also can use Power Automate to integrate playbooks and so on, and to extend the whole scenario inside of this case. So how it happens. So let's go to teams.microsoft.com. The user use is Onboard, adam.bar at emslabs.ch. So I go to there. So I'm coming up in my Teams section on the web, and you see that this scenario is monitored now by my Cloud App Security solution. So that's basically the stuff what is here as you think as a proxy with access control CAS-MS AD login. Now I continue to Microsoft Teams with my account. So now I'm directly inside, and the next thing what I try here, I have here for example a conversation, and I want to do the following. I want to have a copy and paste operation on this task, and whoops, the action is blocked. You cannot copy data out of this app, and your action has been recorded into the audit log. So let's take a closer look on that topic. When we jump back to that specific rule set, we see the policy matches, what happenings, and here we see exactly the cut and copy item what we wanted to do. We have all the information around. This is Adam Bar, what was doing that task, from where, from Switzerland, which device, which browser, from which IP address. So you have a real great and deep control over your applications with featured apps. The next topic for implementing the threat management functionality on our Microsoft 365 environment. With this Microsoft 365 Defender experience, we have a lot of capabilities really to bring things together. With Microsoft Defender for Identity, MSDI is the new shortcut, which is basically a cloud-based security solution that is leveraging your on-premises Active Directory signals to identify, detect, investigate advanced threats, compromised identities, and malicious insider actions directly at your organization level. So you can monitor and profile user behavior and activities. You can protect user identities and reduce the attack surface. You can identify suspicious activities and advanced attacks across the cyber attack kill chain. For example, typical attacks that are launched against an accessible entity, such as a low privileged user, and then quickly move laterally until the attacker gains the valuable assets, such as sensitive accounts, domain administrators, highly sensitive data, and so on. We can also investigate alerts and user activities, obviously, and we reduce also the noise inside of our structure, make it simple, and bring up this service into the game. Then we have also, let's say, a lot of pillars in the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, the MSDE. So we have this threat and vulnerability management, the attack surface reduction, what's included, the next generation protection, which is working with big data analysis, in-depth threat resistant research, and so on. The endpoint detection and response, which is built in the automated investigation and remediation task, where you can use, for example, playbooks to examine alerts, take immediate remediation actions to resolve breaches, and so on. You have also the access to the Microsoft Threat Experts. That's managed threat hunting service that is provided through the security operations centers with experts. Then we have the integration in Microsoft Cloud App Security. That's another point. That's the CASB, the Cloud Access Security Broker, where you can really have great insights, like you can discover shadow IT, you can protect your sensitive information anywhere in the cloud. You can understand the data, where it flows, you can classify it, you can block it, you can disallow, for example, cut and paste operations, and so on. There's a lot of stuff inside. And it's also able or extend your protection against cyber threats and anomalies, where you can directly react on. The Microsoft 365 Defender, the MSDO, it's the safeguarding operation, where you have the protection mechanisms against malicious threats posed by email messages, link URLs, collaboration tools, for example, including Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, Online, OneDrive for Business, or other Microsoft Office clients. So you have threat protection policies, you have the reports for that, you have the threat investigation topics, also automated investigations and response capabilities, and it comes up in different
flavors. So you have a Microsoft Defender for Office 365 Plain 1 that's included in the 365 Business Premium option. The Defender for Office 365 Plan 2 that's included in the E5, A5 and the Microsoft E5 option. And the Microsoft Defender for Office 365 Plan 1, which allows you to use Microsoft Defender for Office 365 Plan 2, and they are available also in additional add-on feature sets inside of this case. So what's happening if you turn on or off Microsoft 365 Defender? So the 365 Defender really unifies your incident responses process by integrating the key capabilities across the whole Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office 365, Cloud App Security, and the Microsoft 365 Defender. And it automatically really turns on when eligible customers with the required permissions visit the Microsoft 365 Center. So you can confirm that service is on when you have the incident management, you have on the Action Center for managing automated investigation and response, and you have the advanced hunting capabilities inside of this case. Let's talk short about the incidents in Microsoft 365 Defender. We can make prioritization in the incidents in Microsoft 365 Defender. Because this service applies the correlation analytics and aggregates really all the related alerts and investigations from different products into one incident. So the Microsoft 365 Defender also triggers unique alerts on this specific part, and you can activate a lot of different things on activities that can only be identified as a malicious given the end-to-end visibility that Microsoft Defender has really across the entire state and suite of products. This specific view gives you as a security operator or a security operation analyst the broader ADEX story, so which helps you really to better understand and deal with complex threats across the organization. The incidents queue shows a collection of incidents that were flagged from across devices, users, or mailboxes, for example. And it helps you to sort through incidents to prioritize and create informed cybersecurity response decisions. Just a note, by default, the queue in the Microsoft 365 Security Center displays incidents seen in the last 30 days. And the most recent incident is at the top of the list, so you can see it at first. Obviously, you can also investigate incidents. The incident queue exposes customizable columns that give you really the visibility into different characteristics of the incident or the contained entities, for example. This helps you make an informed decision regarding prioritization of incidents to handle. So Microsoft 365 Defender aggregates all related alerts, assets, investigations, and the evidence from across your devices, users, and mailboxes to really give you a comprehensive look into the entire breadth of an attack. So to investigate the alerts that affect your network, understand what they mean, and collate evidence associated with the incident so that you can really devise an effective remediation plan. The third point is the management of incidents, because this is crucial and is a critical part to ensure that threats are contained and addressed. In the Microsoft 365 Defender Suite, you have access to managing incidents on devices, users, and mailboxes, and you can manage incidents by selecting an incident from the incident queue specifically itself.
To prioritization of incidents, the Microsoft Threat Protection applies correlation analytics and aggregates all related alerts and investigations from different products into one incident. So it also triggers unique alerts on activities that can only be identified as malicious given the end-to-end visibility that Microsoft Threat Protection has across the entire estate and suite of products. By doing so, the Microsoft Threat Protection narrates the broader attack story, allowing security operations analysts like you to understand and deal with complex threats across the organizations. So the incidents queue shows specifically a collection of incidents that were flagged from across devices, users and mailboxes, for example. It helps you to sort through incidents to prioritization and create an informed cybersecurity response decision. By default, the queue in Microsoft 365 Security Center displays incidents seen in the last 30 days, with the most recent incident showing at the top of the list. It helps you see the most recent incidents first. The incident queue exposes, for example, customizable columns that give you the visibility into different characteristics of the incident or the contained entities. And this helps you to make an informed decision regarding prioritization of incidents to handle. The incident queue also exposes multiple filtering options that, when applied, it enables you to choose to perform a broad sweep of all existing incidents in your environment, or to decide to focus on a specific scenario or threat. So applying a filter on an incident queue can help you to determine which incident requires immediate action is needed. The following filters are available. The status, that you can choose to limit the list of incidents shown based on their status to see which ones are active or which one are resolved. The severity of an incident is indicative of the impact it can have in your assets. So the higher the severity, the bigger the impact, and typically requires the most immediate attention to you. Next is the assigned to, this is the owner, so you can choose to filter the list by selecting assigned to anyone or ones that are assigned to you, for example. Multiple alerts, this filter is to see only incidents containing more than one alert. This could be an indication for an attack that is more complex or progressed in the kill chain, for example. The other option is the multiple service sources. That is a filter to only see incidents that contain alerts from different sources like
Microsoft Defender for Endpoint,
Microsoft Cloud App Security,
the Microsoft Defender for Identity, then the Microsoft Defender for Office 365.
The service source is by choosing a specific source, and you can focus on incidents that contain at least one alert from the chosen source. Another one is the multiple categories. With this you can choose to see only incidents that have mapped to multiple categories of the kill chain and can potentially cause more damage on your environment. So another thing is the data sensitivity, and this is quite important for some attacks focus on targeting to exfiltrate sensitive or valuable data, and by applying a filter to see if sensitive data is involved in the incident, you can quickly determine if sensitive information has potentially been compromised or prioritized. You're addressing those incidents because of data leakage. To investigate an incident is a quite easy and straightforward process. First, as you see, select an incident from the incident queue. This opens a side panel and gives a preview of information about the status, the severity, the categories, and specifically the impacted identities. Afterwards, you can select the Open Incident page. This opens the incident page where you will find more detailed information about the incident itself. You can also do comments, actions, or there's a tab for overviews, alerts, the devices, users, investigations, or the evidence itself. So review the alerts and the devices, the users, or the other entities that are involved in that incident, and you can gather more and more about the incident itself.
So what's in Microsoft Defender for Office 365, which is there to safeguard your organization against the malicious threats posed by email messages, URLs, and collaboration tools. So we have these threat protection policies, which allows us to define threat protection policies, appropriate level of protection of our organization, for example. We have the real-time reports to monitor Defender for Office 365, the whole performance in the organization, the security parts inside of that. Then we have these threat investigation and response capabilities, which allows us to investigate, understand, really to simulate attacks inside directly organization with proven tools, and allows us to prevent threats inside. The automated investigation and response capabilities really save us a lot of work with all the playbooks what we have around to work with and to get a real great insight about the attack, to understand and to have a great remediation plan in place. Okay, let's go to the highlights and features of Microsoft Defender for Office 365, or short called Office 365 ADP. There's a lot of capabilities we still know since a while in this suite about safe attachments, which protects against unknown malware, viruses, and provides really zero-day protection to safeguard specifically your messaging system. So all messages and attachments that don't have a known virus malware signature are routed to a special environment where Defender for Office 365 uses a variety of machine learning and analysis techniques to detect malicious intent. So, and if no suspicious activity is detected, the message is released for delivery to the mailbox. The safe attachment scanning takes place in the same region where your Office 365 data resides. The safe links proactively protects your users from malicious URLs in message or in an Office document. The protection remains every time they select the link, as malicious links are dynamically blocked while good links can be accessed, for example. The Microsoft apps for enterprise on Windows or Mac, for example, like Office for the web, Excel and all the suites, and Microsoft Teams channels and chats, for example. Obviously, users must be licensed for Defender for Office 365 and must be included in safe links policies and must signed in on their devices for protection to take in place. Then we have the safe documents. That's a specific feature of Microsoft Defender for Endpoint to scan documents and files that are opened in protected view. But really, what you should know before. Safe documents is really general available to users with Office version 2004 or greater, and this feature is off by default. And you will need to enable it as the security administrator. The feature is only available to users with Microsoft 365 E5 or Microsoft 365 E5 security license, and it's not included in Defender for the Office 365 plans. It's available for Word, Excel, PowerPoint and Windows, and Microsoft Teams and channels and chat. Then we have the ATP for SharePoint, OneDrive and Microsoft Teams to detect and block files that are identified as malicious, for example. The anti-phishing policies checks the incoming messages for indicators. Yeah, that's a phishing topic, for example. Then we have the real-time reports. It's obviously the monitoring capability, which is available in the Security and Compliance Center, and includes the real-time reports and the insights for a security administrator, compliance administrator, really focusing on high priority issues and all of that stuff. The Explorer, basically also referred as the Threat Explorer, is a real-time report that lets authorized users identify and analyze recent threats. By default, specifically this report shows data for the past 7 days. However, views can be modified to show data basically for the past 30 days. The Explorer contains views such as malware, submissions, phishing and all the emails. You can download this stuff in PDF, for example, as well. Then we have the real-time detections, and we have the threat trackers, which are informative widgets that provides us a view about authorized users with intelligence on cybersecurity issues to might impact our organization, for example. We have the automated incident responses, which are the capabilities of an Office 365 Plan 2. We have the capability to automate investigation processes and all of that stuff. And we have the attack simulator, which lets authorized users to have realistic attack scenarios in your organization. So there are different things available like spear phishing attack, password spray attack, or a brute force password attack in this example.
Let's take a closer look into Defender for Office 365 policies about safe attachments, safe links, safe attachments for SharePoint, OneDrive and Microsoft Teams, and the anti-phishing protection in Defender for Office 365. Obviously, we have different things, like an example in your organization security team can set a fine grains, threat protection at user, the whole organization, reception or on domain level. So it's basically important really to review your policy regularly because new threats and challenges emerge daily. Safe attachments is a zero-day protection which safeguards our messaging system. We have the safe links to provide time-of-click verification of URLs, for example in email messages and Office files, for example. And we have safe attachment for SharePoint, OneDrive and Microsoft Teams, which protects us in the specific collaboration scenarios where we share files, we identify and block malicious files in Teams, sites and document libraries, for example. Then the anti-phishing protection, where we have specific detections attempts to impersonate users, internal or custom domains, and there is a machine learning model and advanced impersonation detection algorithm inside of this task included. So that's the basic stuff what we have in. In the next demonstration we will take a closer look in Microsoft Defender for Office 365 how we can work with safe link and safe attachments in our organization. So let's take a closer look to what we can do with ATP safe links and safe attachments, what we find here on our securitymicrosoft.com page. So we have here the safe attachments part. We can just open it into a new tab, and also the other part about safe links. So if we see here, obviously what we can do, we can say, okay, what we want to have as a global setting, for example, that we protect files in SharePoint, OneDrive, Microsoft Teams, and we turn on the Defender for Office 365 for that specific reason. We can also go through and turn on the Save Documents Office clients, which is available in an M365 E5 or security part. I own such a license, and I can here directly go through and turn on the Save Documents in the Office client itself to integrate this feature set inside of this part. We have also the option of dynamic delivery and test inside of this scenario. What I have done here is, for example, I provided here the dynamic delivery feature, so deliver the message without the attachments immediately and reattach one scan incomplete when the scan is complete then. So that's a basic feature, and we can apply it to a specific domain that works as pretty much inside of this scenario. Furthermore, obviously we can provide additional policies that we say, okay, we want to monitor, block, replace or do anything other with the attachment. So what's happening with the unknown malware and what's going on with your scenario. Under the safe links section, we can, for example, have a scenario that we secure specific users. Let's take a look here. I have here that I basically turn it on. I select the action for unknown potential malicious URLs within Teams. So I want also to have this in place. And then I can apply real-time URL scanning about suspicious links. Apply safe links to email messages sent within your organization. Do not track user clicks and so on. You have different options that you can work with. And you can also say, I don't want to rewrite specific URLs, what I define as trusted in my opinion here. So if I click here on that topic short, oh, yep, let's go back. I just jumped out. And then I can use the default notification text and specifically also a custom notification text. And then I can say I want to apply it to specific people or to any one inside of a specific domain, a specific recipient, and so on. So you have real great capabilities to define the safe links behavior, to save attachments behavior for your scenarios. I think that's a great way and easy way to configure to improve your security in your organization. In the Office 365 Plan 2, we have several options to investigate and respond over specific capabilities.
The Microsoft Defender for Office 365
Plan 2 includes the best of class threat investigation and response tools that enable your organization's security team to anticipate and understand and obviously prevent malicious attacks. So there's the threat trackers that provide the latest intelligence on prevailing cybersecurity issues. For example, you can view information about the latest malware and take countermeasures before it becomes an actual threat to your organizations. Available trackers include noteworthy trackers, trending trackers, tracked queries, and saved queries. On the other hand, we have the Threat Explorer, or real-time detections. This is also referred as Explorer. It is a real-time report that allows you to identify and analyze recent threats, and you can configure the Explorer to show data for custom periods. On the other hand, we have the Attack Simulator that allows us to run realistic attack scenarios in our organization to identify vulnerabilities, like simulations of current types of attacks, like display names, spear phishing attack, password spray attack, or a brute force password attack, and many things more.
One question you could have is why I should use Microsoft Defender for Identity. That's really a very simple and fast deployment, because you just install an agent on your domain controllers. Obviously there is another deployment model available that you can work with port mirroring to put the load to a specific server, but it's a quite easy way really to include your domain controllers and to see, for example, attacks about your DNS, about your on-premises Active Directory, attacks, lateral movement, and all of that stuff that brings a lot of things and information signals from your on-prem infrastructure into your whole holistic security solution. So you have a really potential attack surface. You can use the identity secure score. Then you can detect the identity-based threats, as I already mentioned, about compromised users in your on-prem. So we have the identity protection part inside of the cloud, and with Microsoft Defender for Identity we bring also the on-prem infrastructure into this holistic view in our solution. We have a cloud scale solution with continuous security updates, so all the newest information will jump into this solution itself, and it integrates in the whole Microsoft threat protection strategy what Microsoft delivers with all the Defender solutions and technologies what are available on the market already. So we see the architecture of Defender for Identity, or formerly used Azure ADP as a name. So we have the identity portal, we have the sensors that are available, and the specific service that we need inside of the scenario. Defender for Identity monitors basically our domain controllers by capturing and parsing network traffic and leveraging Windows events directly from the domain controller itself. Then it's getting be analyzed the data for attacks and threats. It's utilized profiling, deterministic detections, machine learning, behavioral algorithms. That's a really Defender for Identity learns from your network, and it enables detection of anomalies and warns you for suspicious activities. In the diagram you see how it works basically and how it drills down. So we have the Defender Identity portal, the ADP sensor which is installed on our domain controller, or you can also work with a gateway solution with port mirroring. That's an extended solution which brings the load to a specific other server, and it's working
to parse read the information directly to the cloud service, but only a percentage of the logs are sent. Then we have these components where you see, and the integration in Microsoft Cloud App Security, which allows us to not only gather the signals inside of our cloud ecosystem, we also can analyze the anomalies and directly build up a technical remediation plan to work around all that stuff. The ATP Cloud Service runs obviously in the Azure infrastructure in US, Europe and Asia, and it's basically connected to the Microsoft Intelligent Security Graph, but it's in the background. Obviously you can integrate Azure Sentinel, any other SEM solution and all of that stuff to collect the data to bring up a whole holistic scenario inside of your organization. To configure the Microsoft Defender for Identity, it's a quite straightforward process. You create your Defender for Identity instance and you connect your Active Directory by downloading Defender for Identity sensor package with the key, the access key you need to have for the installation and the registering of the agent itself. You install Defender for Identity sensor on your domain controller itself and you start gathering the information, and that starts the onboarding process in Microsoft Defender for Identity. Keep in mind that your instance, if you don't connect to Azure Active Directory and you don't install a sensor, it will be deleted after 60 days inactivity on this portal. In the next demonstration we will cover the Microsoft Defender for Identity, how it works basically, how you can work with the portal, and what is working with the installer packages and all of that stuff, and what are the integration capabilities. Now we take a look on the Microsoft Defender for Identity. I already enabled this configuration, the Defender for Identity instance, and you see here how you can work with, for example, the sensor deployment. You just need to download the sensor specifically. You have an access key. You need to download the installation package and just install this package. Afterwards, a certificate will be deployed for mutual authentication that the signals can be working and going through the specific topic there. Then the next thing, we want to discover information from our local Active Directory with an account. I have this also deployed here on my scenario. I have a Microsoft Defender for Identity account, a service account that just needs to have LDAP read permissions on your environment to gather all the users and all the infrastructure information from your local Active Directory. After you install the specific package, let's just check this here, is this threat protection sensor, what you have there, what I have already installed. Then you will find in your services these two services, the Azure Advanced Threat Protection Sensor and the Updater. That's basically all that's running on your system to gather all the information. So you also can define, you want to have a delayed update for multiple domain controllers and all of that stuff. That's possible here. You can integrate the radius authentication, the accounting specifically, inside of the scenario to improve also the information which accounts are working over VPN and all of that sections here in that place. You can integrate obviously all the services together with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint specifically, that you have not only the server or domain controller signals, you can also have the integration with your Defender for Endpoint, so the specific servers or the client computers, that you enhance your whole infrastructure. That comes up, I don't think it's just a switch to enable it. I have already enabled this point in that case. Then you can build up a specific honey token to provide a specific place, an isolated machine that you provide as a honeypot inside of this case, to say okay, or a specific user that you let attack, that you learn from attackers that come into the game. And I also can define sensitive accounts, sensitive groups, which I want to have in a specific obvious here inside of this case. For example, in my opinion, I want to have the specific Dan jump. This is my CEO inside of this case. Then maybe I have a specific group inside of this infrastructure, and I want to have the Exchange server, for example, here in my opinion. That's my Exchange server, what I want to integrate inside of that. You see that it all gathers here, so I just need to click and to enter that inside of this part to have this as a sensitive context inside of my infrastructure. Also, I can have some exclusions about different noisy things, suspected brute force attacks. For example, specific accounts need to use similar processes to gather information. Obviously you should reduce that, but that's a specific point what you can also include here inside of this case. Then it's quite easy. You just define your language, your notification settings where you want to send the infos. You can also integrate it in syslog. You can schedule your reports that you get by mail, for example on modifications on sensitive groups, that I get it here, and also on password exposing, lateral movements, and so on. And I have here the detections for specific attacks, and the delete instance and the role groups. Basically, I define here only the gathering of the information. The main thing happens if I go to the Cloud App Security portal, which is also integratable here, and all the signals flow there. And if I go here and say I want to investigate my user accounts and all of that stuff, I get also all the alerts, all the information here inside of this part, and my identity security posture will be completed with the on-premises data. For example, I see here print spooler topics, unsecured delegations, for example, if I have. So here I get all the stuff included, and I can now, with Cloud App Security, I can put policies in place to mitigate the risk inside of my infrastructure. Because if I go there to say policies, for example, I have this policy type, and I can go directly in the anomaly detection policy, and then you see here exactly the topics what I want to do. If, for example, a golden ticket happens, a DC shadowing for domain controller promotion, data exfiltration over SMB, and so on, all these topics here are in place for you. For example, let's just jump in, threat detection, and then I can go and put additional functionality onside of these attacks about these postures, and directly work on this topic to mitigate that. I think that's a really great option to work with. So quite easy to install and configure, I think. Just deploy the sensors, put enough RAM, go to the documentation for virtual environments, for network configurations, and so on. But that's basically the stuff you can do here and to act on this information.
What is Microsoft Defender for Endpoint? Basically we have the different pillars what the Defender for Endpoint really covers. Basically it's a holistic solution. It's a cloud-based part, and really you have all included, like risk-based vulnerability management assessment, you have the attack surface reduction included, you have this behavioral based and cloud powered next generation protection, the endpoint detection and response topic, the auto investigation and remediation to really investigate inside of attacks to understand them over a broad unit, and obviously to integrate with different other services together other signals and bring that all together for a rich enabled security operations center. We have the APIs that we need to connect, to also connect other systems, to enrich that part, and we have this unified security management approach, which is included in Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. It's a powerful solution that really helps us to control our clients, Windows clients, Mac OS X clients, Linux clients, for example, and obviously on the other hand, we have the option to include servers in our construct.
Obviously, Defender for Endpoint needs also the functionality of the basic Windows 10 operating system itself. And one of the good options, and they help us very much, is the hardware-based isolation. And we have two features that can work to improve our security. This is the Windows Defender Application Guard, which basically protects your device from advanced attacks by keeping you productive. And it's using a unique hardware-based isolation approach, where the goal is to isolate untrusted websites and PDF documents inside a lightweight container that is separated from the operating system via the native Windows hypervisor. So if an untrusted site or PDF document turns out to be malicious, it still remains contained within Application Guard's secure container. So keeping the desktop PC or notebook protected and the attacker away from your enterprise data. On the other hand, we have the Windows Defender System Guard, and this usually protects and maintains the integrity of the system itself as it starts and after it's running, and validates system integrity by using attestation. So these two Windows 10 features are really great, and have a look at it for the exam preparation. It's quite an important feature set. To give you a bit more insight, what types of devices should use the Application Guard? Should be the enterprise desktops. These desktops are mainly domain joined and managed by your organization, so configuration management is primarily done through System Center Configurations Manager, for example, or Microsoft Intune. Employees typically have a standard user privileges and use of a high bandwidth wired corporate network. On the other hand, we have the enterprise mobile laptops, so they are maybe also domain joined and managed by your organization, and the same management appears like on the enterprise desktops. On the other hand, we have bring your own device mobile laptops with personal owned laptops, basically not domain joined, but they are managed by your organization through tools like the Microsoft Intune. So the employee is typically an admin on the device and uses a high bandwidth wireless corporate network while at work, and comparable personal network while at home. The last type is a personal device, because personal owned desktop or mobile laptops are normally not domain joined or managed by an organization, with high admin rights on it, and a high bandwidth wireless personal or cable network is available for that. So if you see that what is happening with the device hardware, we have the integration between the Windows platform services, the kernel and the apps, and we have a Windows Defender Application Guard protected part of it for the processes I mentioned before. So you have a Windows platform service, a kernel part, and for example for browsing the Microsoft Edge. Microsoft also provides the Application Guard functionality in Chrome and in Firefox. Let's take a look about the Windows Defender System Guard. So in order to protect critical resources such as the Windows Authentication Stack, single sign-on tokens, the Windows Hello Biometric Stack, and the Virtual Trusted Platform module, a system's firmware and hardware must be trustworthy. So the Windows Defender System Guard reorganizes the existing Windows 10 system integrity features under one roof, and it sets up the next set of investments in Windows 10 security. It's basically designed to make this security guarantees, so it protects and maintains the integrity of the system as it starts up, and it validates the system integrity has truly been maintained through local and remote attestation. So you see here the basic components: the static root of trust for measurement, the secure launch, the dynamic root of trust for measurement, and the system management mode protection. And you see how the system guard helps you to protect your system itself. As you can see in the following figure, after the system boots, Windows Defender System Guard signs and seals the measurements using the TPM, the Trusted Platform Module. Upon request, management system like Intune or System Center Configuration Manager can acquire them for remote analysis, for example. If Windows Defender System Guard indicates that the device lacks integrity, the management system can take a series of actions such as denying the device access to resources. So you see the different components in the whole process. On the left side, a secure boot with the UEFI configuration and firmware, the peripheral firmware, the Windows bootloader itself. And on the other hand, we have the kernel, the drivers, the system files, and the anti-malware driver that is in a secure platform boot included. And then obviously the third-party drivers that are necessary to run the system defenses, and the Windows sign-in topics, that you have a complete integrity and a validation over the whole process. There are a few different types of web threats, basically categorized in malicious and unwanted websites. One is a phishing website. I think we all know about it, what that happens to that contain a spoofed web form, other phishing mechanisms designed to trick users to go to the wrong sites. Malicious websites that host specifically malware and exploit code that is maybe combined from a Kali Linux or whatever to exploit the code and to include your malware on your system. And on the other section is the custom indicators, like websites whose URLs or domains you have added to your custom indicator list for blocking. That's another way to block sites you don't want to include in your browsing. With the web protection feature, we enable that you can monitor your organization's web browsing security through reports. Under the reports section in Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, there is a specific point that's called web protection in the Defender Security Center, and the reports can contain cards that provide you web threat detection statistics. It's a great feature you also can use for monitoring your web browsing security itself. Another big topic is to prevent malware infections, because malware authors are always looking for new ways to infect your computers. What you can do for that to prevent it: keep your software up to date is one of the best things. Be wary of links and attachments. Watch out for malicious or compromised websites and do your task for that. I think I don't need to say that don't use pirated material, and the specific do not use compromised websites. Don't attach unfamiliar removable drives, and the most important tip, what helps a lot, is use a non-administrator account. And please, by default, Windows uses user account control to provide this automatic granular control of privileges, and don't turn it off. Obviously, use great anti-malware, antivirus software on your system, and combine it with the software solutions you already know from Microsoft 365. What are the specific coin miners and what I mean with that? So many infections start with the following thing: an email message with an attachment comes in and tries to install a malware. Or on the other hand, we have websites hosting exploit kits that attempt to use vulnerabilities in a web browser and other software to install coin miners. On the other hand, we have websites taking advantage of computer processing power by running scripts while a user browses on the website. So what you can do, the best way is to enable the PUA detection. So Some coin mining tools are not considered malware but are detected as potentially unwanted applications, PUAs. Many applications detected as PUA can negatively impact machine performance and employee productivity. For example, the cyber criminals that are always looking for that to take money to encrypt your system, what we recently have a lot in different countries, for domain controllers, for data. They attack all the stuff over that, so be aware about these coin miners.
So let's see exactly what phishing is. It's an email attack that tries to steal obviously sensitive information in messages that appear to be from a legitimate or trusted sender. So there are specific categories in phishing. For example, you have a spear phishing, which is focused, customized content that's really specifically tailored to the target recipient. Then we have whaling, is directed at executives or other high-value targets within your organization with for a maximum effect. Then we have a business email compromise that specifically using forged trusted senders like financial officers, customers, trusted partners to trick recipients into approving payments, transferring funds, or revealing customer data, for example. Another option is your ransomware that encrypts your data and demands a payment to decrypt it. Almost always start out in a phishing message. That's a typical entry point where you go through. So anti-phishing protection can't help you decrypt encrypted files, but it can help to detect the initial phishing message that is associated with a ransomware campaign. And obviously I just point out, really read a lot about that. There's a lot of great material on Microsoft Docs, so that you see the different scenarios, also the attacks, that you get interested how attacks work, and it's mainly always with phishing as an initial part on that. Basically, you can go to protectionoffice.com, you can sign in with your administrative account, and under the threat management capabilities you can just choose the policy, and you can build an anti-phishing policy in that place, where you can say to create that on this part. You can also edit existing policies, what you have in place. Obviously that's all around there on the specific section. You can have also priorities in that place that you can work with this priority level to ingest your data to protect your organization against the phishing scenarios.
Another big topic in Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is that you check the sensor health state in it. There are basically two status indicators that are important to provide you the information on the number of machines that are not reporting properly to the service. One is the misconfiguration state and one the inactive state. The misconfiguration is basically that these machines might partially by reporting sensor data to the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint service and might have configuration errors that need to be corrected. Inactive machines that have stopped reporting to the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint for more than 7 days in past month. So be aware about these numbers. So 7 days in the past month. And on the other hand, obviously if you don't have a correct responding machine sensor, you will not gain all the information you need to protect your environment. So to get a bit more in detail, what does it mean an inactive machine? A machine is not in use. Basically a machine was reinstalled or renamed, a machine was offboarded by script or other methods, or a machine is not sending signals. A misconfigured machine is impaired communications, no sensor data is blocked because of any other reason. So as I mentioned before in the slide about the signals and the sensors, fix and specific these unhealthy sensors and to provide you the correct data you need.
In the next demonstration I will give you an overview over Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, what is you can work with the dashboard, what are the hunting capabilities, and which simulation and tutorials are available to work with Defender.
Now we see the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint topic. You see here the dashboard and all the typical or most important topics inside of your infrastructure. I have here a very small environment just to test, to do stuff inside of this section. For example, what I see directly here, I have active alerts here inside of my infrastructure, and my clients, my devices are at risk, specifically with a medium risk because of an internal brute force attack. Just let's take a look on it here to see what's happening inside of this part. You see an unsuccessful login by administrator. So somebody tries to hack this machine as an administrator, and I can directly jump into this specific point. There you see it's detected, and I can also see a timeline. I can link it to another incident I assigned to me, or a suppression policy, or I consult a threat expert. So I have here directly this incident in Microsoft Identity topics, not Identity, Defender topics. I see a description around that and what are the mitigation tasks around that, including all the incident details and so on, impacted assets. The risk level equals to medium. So let's take a closer look on that. Let's go to the incidents itself. So we see that incidents here, that they are open. We have the credential access category here, and we can now go to the same and put also a status that is in progress for the investigation. I validated is a true alert or a false positive topic, and I set a specific classification on that. In my case, that's really a true alert, so I need to handle on this specific topic. I can directly jump into the device inventory. I see here the exposure level is low and medium from the two devices what I use with a Windows 10 version, and I directly jump into that. Why the exposure level is here different between low and medium, let's take a look on that scenario. What we see directly here is that we have here 66 active security recommendations and 2 active alerts. Then we go to the other device and say, okay, we have a little bit lower and vulnerabilities. But the main issue what we have here in that case, if we take a closer look on that, we see here that there is sensitive data on the specific client. So based on information from Azure Information Protection, from the detection on the device, which data is perfectly done here on this service, there you can see directly what's happening here. We will see that in a little few moments more. So I see here the alerts, what's happening. That's this attack, this client credential attacks, and then I can directly jump into the security recommendations, what I could do here, the updates to deliver a more secure or to reduce the attack surface. Inside of that, the vulnerabilities I can clean up, specifically with the Python what's there, and also all of that stuff what's included on this topic, including the missing knowledge base articles. What I can do directly here, I isolate this device. That's basically that the firewall comes up and I only can interact from this portal, from this service with the machine. All the other things will be disconnected, so that, for example, if an attack happens, it doesn't going to be more distributed on the complete topic, or I restrict the app execution to just Microsoft signed applications inside of this case, directly run an antivirus scan, or I just start to initiate live response sessions, collect investigation packages, and so on. So you see, just jumping into this portal, it directly leads you to action and to focus on the high information topics here. You see this alerts queue. That's specifically that what we have seen on these two devices. We can go to the automated investigations or start an advanced hunting. That means that we have different queries, we analyze what's happening inside of this scenario, we collect the things together and to bind it to understand the specific hacks. And we see the reports, what's happening here inside of my scenario, inside of my infrastructure, and you see all the necessary information directly in a report here in that place. Then on the other side we have all the partner applications that can be connected to the scenario, an SEM, or for example you can connect the flow implementation. What does it mean? You can directly put automation tasks inside of this game to say, okay, for example, I want to directly inform security administrator. He needs to decide, do I isolate this machine and so on over a Teams message, for example. There are a lot of different scenarios available on these topics, but this is just an overview section here to give you an idea. So you see the dashboard, the security recommendation, remediations, weaknesses, and so on. And you have also the capability to run in an evaluation lab. So you can test with a lab. That's a great option here, really, to opt in to test the attacks, to do that in an isolated infrastructure, that you really don't do that stuff inside of your infrastructure, of your real infrastructure. You get also additionally simulations and tutorials with files you can use to really test your security infrastructure, see how attack works, and so on. That's really a great option to work with during this scenario, including obviously the settings, so data retention times. I just pick up a few things of that. Then the advanced features. Do I want to integrate with Microsoft Cloud App Security? Really, again, the switch to that. Do I integrate with Azure Information Protection? You have seen the labeling that's included from that part. I identify the data with high sensitive content and see that inside of my posture, inside of my scenario. And obviously different other things like the Intune connection to Onboard, for example, automatically to include the management of Intune devices. That's really a great option to work with inside of this scenario. And obviously the SEM, what's included inside of this case. That's a specific connector that you can put in, or you use Azure Sentinel, as I do in my opinion. So you see here directly at a real high focused environment with a lot of capabilities to work on your endpoints.
Okay, we are on the end of day 2. We have been focused on the implementation of Microsoft 365 security and threat management. So tomorrow we will go through the implementation of data loss prevention and sensitivity labels, where we go through the configuration of data loss prevention DLP, the configuration and management of DLP policies, the planning for sensitivity labels, and to create and publish sensitivity labels.
So in the end, I want to remember you, go through the self-paced learning resources for MS 101 on the Microsoft Learning Platform and do all the labs, collect your experience and read about the different features on docs.microsoft.com. Last words of this module, I want to tell you a great thank you. And I hope to see you on module 3. This will be a very interesting topic tomorrow. See you soon.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today. I hope our participants will really benefit from it. Also, as an additional resource, let me remind you that this series on Microsoft 365 Mobility and Security MS 101 will also be available for you to watch on demand at aka.ms/enablevts and aka.ms/training center. In fact, you can find more virtual training series available for your on-demand consumption there. Thank you to all the participants for joining us. Hope you enjoyed today's session. We'll see you again tomorrow. Goodbye.